There are 5 elements that make up a perfect vacation: blue sky and turquoise sea, beautiful place to stay, delicious food to eat, historical and natural wonders to stimulate, and good friends to share it all with. If you bring your friends, Puglia is the place that has it all. It's a place that is special, fragile, and utterly unique. In southern Puglia, masseries used to be farmsteads, places of hard toil. Converted into vacation properties, they became synonymous with relaxation, good food, and a slow pace of life. Ours was in the ancient olive grove. Basil, rosemary, and thyme lined the edges of paths leading to the house, with a large sparkling pool in the back. Under the shady pergola, we started our days with a leisurely breakfast. Gentlemen were involved in every phase of meal preparation, from shopping through cooking and wine selection, to serving meals, toasting, to clean up. After serious exertion, prolonged respite was in order. Soon this slow and easy passing of hours became a part of us. We found our Puglian Arcadia on the outskirts of Nardo, a town at the edge of the ancient Ionian Sea. Ionian Sea is a blue and turquoise piece of fabric from the skirt of Venus when she went bathing in the Mediterranean. It floated away and got stuck between the heel and the instep of an Italian boot. Ionian Sea is warm, crystal clear, with sandy, gradual beaches. For those who like beach vacations, it's a dream come true. After several hours in the water, a restorative nap is highly recommended. After dusk, our little town of Nardo is even more picturesque and spellbinding than in the light of day. The piazza where everyone gathers at this hour is beautifully illuminated. We walk slowly with the evening crowd, looking for a place to eat. We settle on Corte Santa Lucia, hidden in a private court under the canopy of green leaves. The wine is good, the atmosphere lively, and then the food arrives. We start with bruschetta, then la burrata andria and pasta ceci, followed by grilled branzino and scallopini with radicchio and gorgonzola. Wine is flowing, the mood becomes festive. After all, we are in Puglia. Gallipoli means in Greek a beautiful city. It was a city on the island, accessible only by a bridge. In ancient times, it was a busy port controlled first by Greece, then Rome, then by Byzantium. In the Middle Ages, a fortress was built to defend the castle and the city. Today, the castle has been repurposed It's an arts and crafts center and a space for various exhibits. Beyond the castle lies La Città Vecchia, a spiderweb of narrow lanes, sunny courtyards, mom-and-pop groceries, and drying underwear. If you're tired of walking and are desperately seeking shade, there are many churches on the island. Take the Church of Sacred Heart. It's not the usual Puglian Baroque. It is wonderfully cool under the Romanesque arches. The only light comes from stained glass windows. There is also the Gallipoli Cathedral, with its extraordinary limestone facade, where inside you can claim a pew and let the spectacle of sacred Baroque art begin. In the afternoon, we walk along the city walls. Here, you meet the sea at every doorstep. Now we're ready to take a dip in the Ionian Sea. North of Gallipoli, we visit two beaches, Lido Soldoro and Punta Prosciutto. The further away we go from the crowds, the better it gets. Here we stay for the rest of the afternoon. The heel of the Italian boot, that is Puglia, is squeezed between two seas, Ionian and Adriatic. The city of Brindisi is on the Adriatic side. Brindisi's fortunes have always been entangled with its neighbors across the Adriatic, Greece and Ottoman Empire. The city was founded by the Greeks. Traces of their presence in the area date back to 1300 BC. But the city really flourished under the Roman rule. In 300 BC, 560-kilometer road called Via Appia was built from Rome to Brindisi to import best olive oil from Puglia to Rome. These columns mark the end of Via Appia and the edge of the imperial territory. There is so much to see in Brindisi that at midday we already need a rest. After a short time out, we plunge into the maze of narrow lanes and Renaissance lodgings. If we were in Verona, this would do as a balcony under which Romeo wooed Juliet. We are making our way across town to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built in the 11th century. It is the finest example of Romanesque architecture in southern Italy. The church once belonged to the Templar Knights, and later to the Knights of Malta. It used to have vaulted ceilings and circular shape because the early Crusaders usually attended Mass on horseback. There are amazing 12th century frescoes preserved on these walls. In the afternoon, the facade of Brindisi's Duomo gets a benefit of full sunlight. Inside, the smell of incense, burning candles, and sound of lightly shuffling feet are a welcome respite. Summer nights at the seaside promenade in Brindisi are warm. We are at the small bistro and Vitek is already examining the menu when the fresh local olive bread arrives. Ah, Puglian breads! The look, the smell, the texture and the taste. Experience that satisfies all the senses and the soul. The variations on the theme of flour and a few other ingredients are endless. Pizzi, licesti, panzerotti, and don't miss out on taralini. We stuff our faces and it makes us happy. To the Italian cuisine. Gulf of Taranto is a body of water between the hill and the instep of the Italian boot. Taranto, nestled at the water's edge, is a modern city with an ancient soul. Since the time of ancient Greece, the city has been ruled by many different kingdoms, which resulted in an eclectic mix of architectural styles. This Baroque facade leads us into the Cathedral of San Cataldo, which is a treasure chest of Baroque art. 84 meters long naves covered with wooden coffered ceiling host multiple side chapels. The most sumptuous is the Chapel of San Cataldo, holding the saint's relics. It's surrounded by marble wall mosaics, stucco decorations, and topped with an enormous fresco dome. For a really thorough exploration of Taranto's history, we visit the Archaeological Museum. Of course, Greeks were here first, almost 3,000 years ago. They left many traces of their presence, some very well preserved. Look at these vivid colors. Our ancestors made good quality paint. And exquisite pottery. In the 6th century BC, they started to coin money in gold. Same image on both sides, embossed and concave. Trade flourished in these parts. Half a millennium later, the Romans were in charge. They also left many beautiful artifacts. Then came Byzantium and left intricately crafted mosaics and gold jewelry. One should not leave Taranto and forego a visit to Castello Aragonese. Built by Ferdinand Aragon, King of Naples, in 1480s, the castle stands on top of the earlier Swabian fortress. The structure remains substantially intact since 1594, and it is well preserved and maintained, attracting many visitors. The day was long, and we've earned this view of the sky and our feet in cool water. And other parts of the body too. And naps in the shade, which are delicious. City of Lecce, the capital of Salento Peninsula, is Baroque in nature, but at its core lies ancient Rome. We're looking for the evidence of both, and Baroque is much easier to find. First and foremost, Lecce's churches are a proof of Baroque's extravagant nature. Basilica di Santa Croce has an insanely decorated facade and an interior to match. 17 side chapels, Corinthian columns, and a carved coffered ceiling. Next, the Church of St. Irene. The aesthetic white walls of the interior bring out the excess of the limestone carvings and decorative detail. No self-respecting Italian town would do without a Duomo or a cathedral. Lecce's Duomo, built in the shape of a cross, has reinforced shell that dates back to the 12th century. Inside, Baroque embellishments from 1659, including brightly painted dome, and the main altar with brass and crystal decorations. There are also 12 side chapels, which we were not patient enough to see all. The parting shot is from the 12th century crypt under the Duomo, which is supported by 92 columns. The last is Chiesa di Santa Chiara, which is all raging Baroque, starting with the facade, main altar, and the panorama of the interior. When we emerged into the sun from the coolness and hush of Santa Chiara, the city's landscape seemed like an enormous theater set. A little bit dazed, we stumbled into the Piazza di Santo Ronzo, who is Lecce's patron saint. And here we found the evidence of city's ancient core, well-preserved ruins of the Roman amphitheater from the 2nd century AD. Exotic animal hunts, gladiators' fights, and public executions were staged here for an audience of 25,000 people. There is ice cream underneath that umbrella. At this point, we all need a sugar fix, because there is still a lot of the city left to see. So we dive into the labyrinth of shady lanes with ornamented 18th century residences, where we find a shopping paradise. Museo Faggiano is our last stop before a well-deserved dinner. It is a private archaeological dig that excavated many medieval artifacts, rooms decorated with frescoes, and underground tombs. These are people who refuse to walk any further than the restaurant. At the entry, this eclectic mobile hung overhead. Italian food never disappoints. Antipasto, pizza capricciosa, and vino rosso. Simple but classic. We chose Otranto because it lies on the Adriatic coast, has a colorful history, and a famous beach nearby. They say that from Otranto on a clear day, you can see the mountains of Albania. We certainly had a clear day, but were much too busy squeezing our car into a very small parking spot to care about Albania. After parking, we headed straight for the La Città Vecchia, that is the Old Town, Piazza Basilica, and the famous Cathedrale, consecrated in 1088. During its lifetime, the church has been renovated several times, and the interior displays various architectural styles. For example, this distinctive gilded wooden ceiling dates back to the late 17th century, as well as the baptismal font, beautifully inlaid with marble. These columns, however, come from the church's crypt and are 900 plus years old. The most famous artwork of this cathedral is its mosaic floor from the 12th century. This gigantic work of art was designed by a local monk and executed by a local craftsman. It depicts, in a form of tree of life, episodes from Old Testament and scenes and beasts from medieval chivalry literature. It's a miracle that the floor survived the Ottoman invasion of 1480. The details of this horrific event remain in the records of local monasteries. 800 inhabitants of Otranto were beheaded by Turks in the town square. To commemorate the Otranto martyrs, a large chapel was added to the cathedral where the remains of the victims became the part of the altar. After the city was liberated by Christians in 1481, a defense system was built, at the heart of which was a large castle with 4 circular towers. The following century had seen major castle modifications to adapt to the development of the new firearms. We climbed to the top of the castle tower to take in the views of Old Otranto, surrounded by a massive wall, and the city's marina. Now we all deserve a break. Baia di Turkey is an Adriatic beach just north of town, where Turkish forces landed in 1480 and marched to conquer Otranto. The beach was lovely, white sand, warm breeze, and crystal water. We all rushed in for our first dip in the Adriatic. Vitek, still with his shirt on and his cell phone in his pocket, No Facebook, Vichu, for the rest of the trip. Refreshed, we're back in town and in search of one more historical marvel, the Byzantine Church of St. Peter, erected at the end of the 9th century. We crisscross the narrow slanted streets and finally find the ancient structure on the top of the hill and dwarfed by buildings nearby. The church is small but beautifully restored. In some places, we're told, there are 5 layers of frescoes, one upon another. It seems that once upon a time, every square inch of the wall was covered in vibrant color. In this narrow niche on a curved ceiling, we find a fresco of the Last Supper, the only one preserved from the 9th century. And here are fragments of later paintings from 11th and 12th century. Now that we've completed our historical itinerary for the day, we want to go shopping. It does not sit well with these two gentlemen, but we're leaving the opposition in the dust. We go on a shopping spree, which culminates with a purchase of a red straw hat. It's been a long and eventful day. The sunset on Otranto seaside promenade is enchanting. And again, we have to decide where to eat. We picked a place with a view of the harbor, but now, never mind the view, we are focused on food. We have eaten well, honestly too well, so we decide to walk to our dessert. Vito is our ice cream expert, and we trust him, especially when he's buying. Good night, Otranto. By now, we have no doubts that Puglia's coastline has no equal. It's time to return inland, to Arbellobello. Truly unique spot. In the city of Arbellobello, all houses look like beehives. We wander around enchanted, as if magically we've entered a fairy tale. These surreal conical buildings are called trulli. The roofs are fitted together like a puzzle from chiseled pieces of local limestone, without any binding substance. The oldest trulli in Arbellobello date back to 14th century. Wooden walls covered with limestone and stone roofs without mortar make the early huts easily to dismantle in a hurry, to avoid taxes levied on all permanent settlements. The hand-cut stone pieces on the rooftops are called pinnacles, and may be in the shape of ball, star, disc, cone, or other. There were signatures of stonemasons who built the roofs. It was only in 1620 that Arbellobello acquired the character of an established village. Trullo Sovrano is one of the largest in town. Built in early 1700s, over the years it was home to a chapel, grocery store, court, monastery, and private residence. Now it's a museum. There is also a church of Saint Anthony of Padua, built in the same style but much later, in the beginning of the 20th century. At the gate to the churchyard, we are all debating where to go next. Our choice was Grotta di Castellana, which was just a short drive away. In 1938, outside the town of Castellana, a thin crust of calcareous rock collapsed under its own weight, revealing an underground chamber 62 feet deep. Thus began the exploration of a vast network of subterranean passages, caves, chambers, and lakes. During millennia, water rich in carbon dioxide slowly dripping upon limestone created intricate crystalline structures. Stalactites, stalagmites, drapes, and other formations of striking shapes and colors. The most amazing underground chamber is White Grotto, located about 2 miles away from the point of entry. We have never seen anything like it. We followed the narrow underground path for at least 4 miles. We all deserve lunch. The restaurant has been recommended by the locals, and we really like sitting in the garden. On the menu, the best choices for a warm afternoon are prosciutto e melone, barley salad with onions, tomatoes, and roasted peppers, and fettuccine con funghi porcini. Delizioso! After the meal, we're heading to our villa, which is about 1.5-hour drive away. Again, we return to Puglia's interior, to its snow-white heart called Ostuni. Ostuni is a shining city on the hill, where facades are regularly whitewashed and polished to a gleaming finish. We leave our cars at the foot of the hill and start our climb to see the city up close. Unlike other Apulian cities, Ostuni was born and thrived in the early 12th century under the Norman and Italian rule. Ostuni's old town is bright and sparkling in the sun and cool and inviting in the shade. We wander under ancient arches, along cobbled alleys, narrow lanes, and up the steps until we reach the highest point in the city. That's where the town's cathedral was erected in 1495. Another dazzling rosette window, stonework that looks like lace. Inside, the last renovations were finished at the end of the 18th century, so the decor is mostly Baroque. Frescoes on the ceiling, ornamental stonework, and detailed wood carvings. Further down Via Cattedrale, the Museum of Preclassic Civilization is located in the former Carmelite monastery. The entry is through the church of Saint Vitus, for some Vitus, patron saint of dancers and epileptics. The museum features archaeological finds from the Paleolithic era, which were discovered in the caves just outside Ostuni. Well-preserved remains of a woman and her unborn child were found, along with jewelry and artifacts usually accompanying burials. Computer image of the woman generated from the found remains shows a tall, well-built young female, about 7 months pregnant, sleeping peacefully on her side. Once outside, we are momentarily blinded by the sun and the brilliance of the white city. It is noon and time for lunch. How about some salad and cheese? Underneath a pergola and lazy cumulus clouds, we are ready to sample Puglian cheeses. It's a hard job navigating the sea of cheeses made in Puglia, all hand-milked, hand-mixed, and hand-sliced. We'll have some caciocavallo, canestrato, and burrata. Is that enough? No? Then also some stracciatella and manteca. And because we never skip dessert, it's either cheesecake or tiramisu or stracciatella cheese gelato, followed by double espresso. I'm sure it was total passenger weight after that lunch, rather than a cobblestone street, which was the cause of this flat tire. Friendly Italian mechanic saved the day. Of course, he had 2 assistants with engineering degrees. We have already crisscrossed Puglia several times. What remains is the very tip of the Salento Peninsula, Santa Maria de Leuca. This was once the end of the world for the ancient Romans. The lighthouse presides over the promontory where limestone rocks rise from the blue sea 300 feet high. We head to the marina to rent a boat. We want to see the rock formations up close, rising from the water. We want to explore spectacular limestone fractures, hollows, grottos, and underwater passages that guidebooks praise for pages. As we turn the corner, this is only the taste of things to come. Quiet, or you'll scare the birds and fish. I find the rocks a lot more interesting, don't you? Look at this water, the proof that we're on the Mediterranean. Now that attraction was not included in the price of the trip. A bachelorette party on a neighboring boat? Vico even caught himself a bride. Back at the lighthouse, a thunderstorm is about to begin. We shelter in an end-of-the-world cafe. By the time we finished our cappuccinos, the storm has passed. Next to the lighthouse, where the land plunges into the sea, stands a church that has survived ages. Constructed over the ruins of Minerva's temple, it was destroyed and rebuilt countless times. On the way to the edge of the rocks to take a last look at the blue that defines Mediterranean, we come across this poem by Cosimo Russo, the native of Puglia. Breathe like you're going to die. Here the journey ends. For a moment you feel at home, and that moment is eternity. It seems we can't get enough of Puglia. It is very late in the day. Our shadows grow long out of proportion, yet we want to visit still another beach for a last dip in the Ionian Sea. The water is obscenely warm, and we are splashing around like kids in a puddle. Farewell, Puglia. We promise to come back soon. Laggiù tra gli alberi, intrecciato coi rami.